demonstrate how this works. If you look above, you can see that something will start turning when I will turn it off. There are very heavy weights that are slowly falling down, and weights start turning the cylinder. And that cylinder has pins attached to it. So when the cylinder turns, the pins fall against hammers, and the hammers then fall against bells, and that's what makes the music. Dus zo ging dat. So in the 1700s, people didn't have to rely on those church towers anymore to know what time it is, and the very, very wealthy families could have clocks like these displayed in their homes. And I just asked the group in Dutch, can you tell me what time it is by looking at this clock then?
Many after people after the war.
Yeah, I see people looking puzzled, and that's of course why I asked it. So we are looking at the back of the clock, and that's why you can see what time it is. The back is made from glass, so you can see what goes on inside. The mechanics were so special that if you made it that far in life that you could have something as expensive as this in your home, you don't want to hide it. So I will turn it on, and you will see that things start to move, and they move very similarly to what happened in the tower. Here's the cylinder with all the little pins. Once it starts turning, the pins will push against the hammers, and you will see that the hammers are then lifted and will fall against the bells, and that's how the music is made. For some cylinders, you would have to change the entire thing for a new melody. On this cylinder, there are a bunch of pins that are now falling in between the hammers. And in this cylinder, you can change it a bit where it is, and then the pins fall against the hammers for a new melody. And the pins that we just heard are then falling in between the hammers. So there are 7 different melodies programmed on this cylinder. So the clocks look kind of similar. They're from the same period. They're both made by British men. They're both very heavy and very expensive and shiny. But there are 2 important differences that I want to point out. The first one I just explained in Dutch is that instead of the bells from that clock, we have an organ pipes. And an organ is an instrument that needs air to start sounding. And with organ pipes, you can choose the length of the note, and that's what I demonstrated. And with bells, that's a whole different story. That's very difficult, nearly impossible. Because of that, the melodies could be, you had more options to choose what you want to do within one melody. So the other difference, before I will turn it on, is on the front, and I won't say too much, but some people refer to this as an example of the very first television. It's very small, so you can take a step forward if you want to see, but make sure there's enough distance and everyone gets a chance. too much about this clock. It's newer, it's from the 1800s instead of 1700s. It's a French clock, and the intention behind it was to create a spectacle. It was visually very pleasing. So I will just turn it on and make sure you can see it. The instruments here, as opposed to the clocks over there, were produced on a larger scale. They are no longer unique examples. More people could enjoy it because we learned more about the technique behind it, and it was easier to produce, but it was still exclusive to more wealthy families. So one of the instruments around me is one of the top pieces of the museum collection. It traveled all around the world, gained a lot of interest and attention from the public and also from researchers. So if you could take a guess, which one do you think it is?
This one, yep.
This one?
Yep.
Okay. It's a very special day because the first time in my career as a tour in this museum, 2 people have guessed it correctly. In the last tour someone guessed this one, and now you have also guessed this one. And before today, that hasn't happened before. So we still have a cylinder inside with pins, just on a very small scale. But instead of hammers that are in between the cylinder and the instrument that makes the sound, the bells, the cylinder is directly pushing against this musical cone. This is an example, but the musical cone inside here is a lot smaller. Oké, zijn we er klaar voor? So the rabbit, it was a toy made for children, but adults appreciated it just as much, so they had toys like that for themselves as well. The acrobat is an example of that. This is a copy, but the original is from 1887 from Paris, and what you can imagine is that someone would host a fancy dinner party with lots of guests, and everyone is sitting around a very large, long table, and then in the middle of the table, this acrobat would be on during dinner for extra spectacle. En dat zag er dan zo uit. special to people or the tricks that it could do. It was also how it looked and how the doll is dressed. It was in a time when traveling to far places was not something everyone could do. There were no films or televisions. So a different culture that was something that people had not experienced, that was unfamiliar and very fascinating to them. So this was an example of, an imaginary picture and very much not the reality, but that was part of why it fascinated people so much. So all the other instruments were meant for inside. We are now looking at instruments that were meant for outside, and this meant that way more people could enjoy and get to know this mechanical music because the other stuff was meant for only rich people could enjoy it. This is a belly organ. First we had belly organs and then the larger organs came to be. This was especially popular in the Netherlands, belly organs and other street organs. One very practical reason is that it was easier to travel because we have no hills or mountains. And the other reason is that we had a kind of renting system where you did not have to be the owner of an organ like this, and you could play it as long as you could pay the rent. Because they had to pay rent for this thing and other rent probably as well, they did not just want to share beautiful music with people, they had to make some money off of it. And what they did was sing the most tragic songs about heartbreak and pain and misery, and afterwards they would collect money and people would be so emotional that they just couldn't say no, and they would have the lyrics displayed or paintings to really tell the story. So I will demonstrate how this would go. I would sing along, but the COVID measures, I'm not allowed to right now. And the volume is quite loud because it was meant for outside. So or take a step back or put your hands against your ears, that's all fine. Nou daar gaan we. The longer you want the music to be, the bigger the cylinder has to be, and it's not very practical. So in 1892, the Italian Mr. Gavioli created the first organ book, and organ books really revolutionized organ music. So here we have all the holes are aligned with organ pipes, and if there is a hole, then the air can go through it. You can hear the pipe, you can hear the note, and where it's closed off, the air cannot go through it, and so you won't hear it, and then you can program the music. You can decide which notes do I want to hear and in what order. Nou, dan kan ik het natuurlijk voor jullie voordoen, maar misschien vindt iemand anders het ook leuk om het voor te doen. Heb ik een vrijwilliger?
Clockwise, hè?
Ja, met de klok mee en het mag best wel snel. It's very popular. It really came to symbolize Dutch culture, like stroopwafels or traditional clothing. You can find images of it in the National Airport. In the 90s even, some famous artists would be welcomed on the airport with this organ, part of the welcoming committee, and welcome to the Netherlands. It was built in Belgium, so not the Netherlands. But then 5 or 6 years later, it came to the Netherlands, and there it was restored, kind of adjusted, and ever since then it's been in the Netherlands. Made some trips around the world, but came back to the Netherlands. So it was built in Belgium, and it's called the Arab. Nothing to do with anything Arabic, just the painting on the front, and that's in a similar theme as the Acrobat. So this was just another fascinating image that people imagined, oh, what might some different place look like. We have an electric motor, so I won't have to spin it myself. En het volume is natuurlijk best wel luid, dus pas ook weer even op. The volume is quite high. This isn't the largest organ we have. We have more, and that is behind these doors. The organs we see here, you could find these 100 years ago in dancing halls, or like the discos and clubs of the nightlife 100 years ago. This is during the roaring 20s. And you could find these in dancing halls and also street carnivals. So the organs, they did not have one specific dancing hall that was their home. They traveled all around the country, and even the mortier, that's our biggest one, it just traveled from place to place. You could not find this for longer than a week, I think, somewhere. And it was easy to do because you can kind of deconstruct it and then construct it again, almost like Lego blocks. There are handles where you can pick up one piece and then slide it into the other. And so the organs were kind of like a jukebox. You could request a song and then pay money for it. And then there was still some that had to spin the wheel manually. Now we have electric motors. And yeah, if you request a song, you had to pay some money for it. And so all the songs were very short. So you had to keep requesting and keep paying. that's what it's called. You can see the painting is very different. This organ has the original painting on it, but that is actually unusual. It was way more common that these organs would be adjusted and changed over time because they had to remain fashionable. The last big adjustment that was done to this organ was in the museum in 2004, and they installed a MIDI system. So I have tried to show you kind of a development from different kinds of cylinders to organ books, ways of programming the music, and now we have a digital system that can program the music and translate those digital data to something the organ can play. There are hundreds of songs that I can choose from just with one click.